Top spin. Okay, good. Good afternoon. Namaste. Last class I just gave you about what is the poison, various ways of poisoning, and then what are the domestic poisons actually we see in our premises where we reside, what are all the poisons we hoard the poisons in our houses. Okay, now whenever a poison is taken by any means, what happens to the poison? Otherwise, what is the fate of the poison? If suppose a poison is ingested or taken orally, normally immediately after accidental poison or homicidal poison, or when person suspects that there is something wrong in the food or he develops some sort of symptoms, they normally vomit out. So the vomiting causes most of the poison to be expelled if it is in this way. 70 to 80% of the poison is vomited out. And it is not necessarily with all poisons, but normally with the poisons what they take accidentally or when they develop symptoms, the first thing anybody would do is they induce vomiting. I'll tell you how they induce vomiting and all, and the product is mostly lost by this process of vomiting. And if the poison is absorbed into the system, it is metabolized by the liver, and about 10 to 15% of the poison is excreted in the urine, and some poisons are also lost through sweat, and I told you some poisons are metabolized into inert material, and some are changed into inert salts, and that's how the poison is metabolized or excreted. Whenever a person is poisoned, we talk in terms of levels of consciousness, which is described in your textbook and for our practical purposes from stage 0 to stage 4 or grade 0 to grade 4. Grade 0 is the patient is conscious, coherent, intellectual functions are normal, that is almost there is no CNS effect. Person normally is general condition, fair, conscious, coherent, respond to all the questions. Grade 1, there is a definite response, he answers to the oral commands, he reacts to your oral commands, he speaks, he responds to your questions, but he may be little drowsy. Grade 1, there will be maximum response with minimal stimulus. Maybe little pain stimulus, maybe you just give a prick, he'll be on normal reflexes will be elicited, there will be withdrawal movements and everything. The movements, they are present with the minimal stimulus. And grade 3, minimal response with the maximum stimulus, that is graded as grade 3 level, where the response is there but the response is elicited with maximum stimulus. So we call it as minimum response to maximum stimulus, grade 3. And grade 4, when the patient is in coma, deep drowsiness, no reflexes are elicited even with the painful stimulus. So this is how the levels of consciousness is described, for that matter, in any case, not necessarily in the poisoning. I told you how the poisoning, actually in what stages the poisoning is discussed. The poisoning can be acute. Acute means sudden onset with good symptoms. The patient will be suffering with sudden development within a span of 15 minutes, half an hour or 1 hour, acute. And the poisoning can be very chronic. A chronic exposure to any poisonous substances. The time developed or the symptoms developed due to this constant exposure of the poison. Many of the times we even mistake it to some disease. We may not think that it is because of the poison. So whenever you examine a case, for that matter in your clinical practices, complaining with maybe chronic lethargy, chronic anemia, chronic constipation, we normally as a clinician, our normal temperament, or we don't think in the terms of whether it is possibly a poisoning. For instance, an individual, maybe a person may be working in the lead industry, maybe the toys industries or paint industries, exposed for chronic lead poisoning, and the commonest presentation in the chronic lead poisoning is anemia, facial pallor. So unless as a clinician we also think of this, that is the very reason why in your eliciting any history, taking an history, we ask for the occupation of any patient. So it is not to be noted just as a casual mention. Even if it is taken at your reception or some of your assistants take the history, we have to look into the occupation of the person. So suppose if he is working in the paint industry, you can just think of, the idea should come whether it is a chronic lead poisoning or any. There will be another type of poisoning called subacute. Say acute, chronic, and an intermediate between these two, we call it as subacute. And sometimes it will be a fulminating poison. Very drastic, very acute, very severe with the diabetes. This fulminating can be in any mode. Recently last month, you must, you remember very well what happens in Vizag. Suddenly, people who were sleeping in the midnight, they got up with a choking sensation, burning thirst, difficulty in breathing. They were worried. People were running out in panic. What happened? And the people who runs, what normal happens, they have to take more of breathing and more of exposure to the poisonous gas. And it took some time to realize that there was a gas leakage from LG polymers. I think all of you know it's a stearin gas. It was a poisonous gas. And the symptoms, severe choking, respiratory difficulty, people were running for the air hunger. In that process, they fell down, people were in coma, they had asphyxial problems, and so many people died, all of you know it. So, the sudden acute fatal poisoning, fulminating poisoning. Similar gas tragedy, gas leak happened sometime back in 1982-84 at Bhopal. I think many of you, I don't know if you remember it, Bhopal gas tragedy. Even now, say after nearly 40 years of gas leak, there are still patients suffering with those toxicities. That was methyl isocyanate gas. That was also midnight leak from Union Carbide factory. And of course, the casualties were much more than, luckily the casualties and the effect was less in LG polymers because of the swift action of the rescue people, rescue teams and the government, everyone for that matter, police. They could see that and they could control the gas leak in the minimum possible time. But when you see the Bhopal tragedy, it was many folds. There were many casualties, and the people had lot of physical deformities, mental effects. Even now, people are suffering with toxicity. So the fulminating poisons also is a variety of poisoning. There is one more term normally given in your book is apart from homicide, suicide and accidental poisoning. There is one term called parasuicide. Parasuicide means a person attempted suicide. Not once, there may be recurrent attempts of committing a suicide. He may be suffering with a depression, maybe some delusions, and they commit suicides, attempted suicides. They are not even successful in committing suicide also. Failure in committed suicides. They are called parasuicides. When I told you that there are so many poisons even in your residential areas, in our houses, how to prevent poisoning? See, this prevention, the matter of prevention comes only when I talk about accidental poisoning or industrial poisoning. What precautions are to be taken, how to protect yourself, what are the duties of the management of the company, what is the responsibilities of environment and pollution control boards, all these things. This is not a simple subject where I can talk about how to manage, how to prevent the poisoning in industrial workers or this thing. This platform will not be suitable for that because it needs very vast discussion and many departments are involved in the safety measures in prevention of accidental poisonings. But as far as the domestic poisons are concerned, see, unfortunately, we have seen many cases where the children they drink kerosene mistaking it to be water. You must have heard many people got admitted to the hospitals with acute symptoms of cough, breathlessness after taking kerosene mistakenly for water, and they immediately developed the respiratory symptoms and they developed severe bronchopneumonia, bronchitis and pneumonitis, and they need admission, treatment in ICUs. No, it was just which could be a prevented accidental intake of the poison. So in the domestics, in kitchens, we always say that don't keep these disinfectant liquids, kerosene bottles nearer to the water bottles. Please don't do it. They should be kept in a separate cupboard. The normal habit, they keep Lysol, Spinoz beneath the sinks, which is accessible for the child. They mistake it for something else and they may accidentally confuse it. So the poisonous material should be separately kept in a cupboard, safely locked. And the tablets, I told you, every house, almost all the residential houses will have some tablets for various diseases, various infections, for regular treatments for diabetes, thyroids and hypertensions. The tablets ought to be placed in a separate cupboard. It should not be accessible to the children. And even the adults, even the people who consume tablets, they should check the tablets, their expiry dates. And whichever, please take out the tablets which are expired, dispose them properly. And of course, the playing with the toys, and you should be able to take better quality of the toys, but keep a watch on the children, their behavior and their effects on the child. It is to be constantly observed. And all the poisonous material should be labeled legibly. Big capital bold letters, you just stick it, poison, you write poison and keep in a separate cupboard. You can also keep the diaphragm or logo of the poison, which you all are aware how the poison logo will look. That is to be stick, it is to be pasted to all the containers, the bottles, the tins, and keep them separately in the houses, because the domestic accidental poisonings are not uncommon. So many times we see, and especially the children and the elder people under the influence of alcohol. I have seen people taking kerosene, drinking in water under the influence of alcohol. Yes. So all these necessary precautions are to be taken to prevent poisoning accidentally in the houses. And of course, I told you the precautions to be taken in the factories, in the industries, outside, which should be discussed in a better platform. Now, how will you diagnose a case of poisoning? When do you think that yes, it could be a poison? The symptoms. Suppose a person develops immediately vomitings, pain abdomen, or some abdominal discomfort, bloating after taking food outside. Say, let us say recently some 100 people got admitted after taking pani puris. So, for any sensible man, we think that it was a food poisoning. Not only one, but the people who have consumed the same food. Maybe street vendors, pani puris, the most notorious food. Some people can consume pani puri, and it is a potential health hazard. Apart from chronic diseases like hepatitis, typhoid, and other things, acute gastritis, severe symptoms, they do develop the poisoning. And it can happen in the functions. Say, lots of people had taken the same food and developed symptoms, we think of poisoning. Or somebody exposed to some toxic gases. There's somebody exposed, he was working in the field, they were spraying insecticides and suddenly developed dizziness, weakness, or started vomitings. You can think of, a poisoning. Or somebody, exposed, he was going for the evening walk or morning walk, suddenly something bitten and started developing dizziness. Yes, you can think of some insect bite. So the type of the symptoms, the history, when he developed, how he developed, And what are the possibilities? Is there possibilities of poisoning? Yes, you can always think of it. So the onset, the history will definitely make us to suspect or think in terms of poisoning. And sometimes if you are very fond of diagnosing the poisoning, see, sometimes the patient can present with acute intestinal obstructions, with vomiting, sudden pain, and a physician with the toxicology background who also suspects even poisoning, and suspect poisoning in intestinal obstruction cases also. So basically, when a patient presents to you with an acute symptoms of pain or abdominal pain, vomitings, giddiness, dizziness, then apart from the clinical conditions, the possibilities of poisoning, exposure to the poison, exposure to the toxic substances are to be taken. Then only we can diagnose the poison. Of course, the next step, once you diagnose the poisoning, they say what sample collection, all this thing, but let me see what is that. You are a consultant physician or you are a doctor attending a case of poisoning. What are the duties of the doctors in treatment of a case of poisoning? You know the duties of the doctor, you know the rights of the doctor, you know the responsibilities of the doctor. But there are certain special precautions or duties you are entitled, you are supposed to do in case of poisoning. So we discuss it in terms of medical and the legal. Medical, you know very well, you are a professional doctor, you are supposed to treat the patient. That I tell you the medical treatment depending on the poison, the nature of the poison, the type of the poison. You have got the moral, ethical responsibility of treating the patient of poisoning and you should put all your efforts to save the patient. Yes, that's your medical duty. But in the poisonings, you will also have got the legal responsibilities. If you suspect a patient who comes to you for some complaint, if you think that it is a poisoning, simply just you cannot say, sir, you are suffering from poisoning. No, you are suspecting. Then you should first confirm your suspicion whether it is a poison. Take a detailed history of the patient once again. Since how long he has got this problem? Will he correlate it to some incident, some intake of the food or some other things where he developed these symptoms? Whether it is a sudden onset or the gradual onset. If it is a gradual onset, whether if you have that chronic poison in your mind, whether it was an homicidal poisoning, somebody administered a slow poison, or whether it could be due to some industrial poison, workplace poison, constant exposure to the drug substance, or some substance came in contact with that individual, and because of that he developed toxic symptoms, chronic toxicity. So, if it is a subacute type, you want to get patient to be admitted, yes, you can hospitalize the patient, keeping in close observation under your direct supervision. If you really suspect that there is some homicidal poisoning, you keep a watch on the attendants who are coming to the hospitals, whether they are, if you still have the doubt whether they want to get their own food from the home. So sometimes apart from the doctor, you should also have a sense of suspicion. It should be like, detective. You think into the various behaviors, who are all coming, whether he is being poisoned, what are the discussions going on, all these things. So if you suspect that it is in homicidal poison, a case of homicidal poisoning, now it is your legal responsibility. You should inform it to the police. You cannot continue to treat the patient without informing the police that it is the case of homicidal poisoning. So if you happen to treat any patient of homicidal poisoning, it is your legal duty to inform the police about this. Otherwise you will be punished. If it is a suicidal poison, see, the cases of, when you go by statistics, in many of the hospitals, many of the clinical establishments, many of the patients come, usually majority are suicidal, attempt to suicide cases. So if it is a definite case of attempted suicide and the patient came to you for the treatment, you can straight away start the treatment. And in the case of suicidal attempt, case of suicidal poisoning, you need not inform to the police. If it is a private hospital, please underline. The private hospitals need not inform to the police if it is a suicidal poisoning. They can treat the patient. After the recovery, he can discharge the patient like any other disease. You can give a prescription, then ask to come for the follow-up, everything. The only thing is, if it is your private hospital, or they need not inform the police in suicidal poisoning. But unfortunately, if the patient dies, if the patient who has attempted the suicide, if the patient dies during the treatment in the hospital, in your private hospital, you cannot issue a death certificate here. In the event of death, the death is to be reported to the police. Then in turn the police will arrange for the post-mortem examination. Then only they will issue the cause of death. So as a treating clinician, as a treating consultant, you are attending the patient, you cannot issue a death certificate. Death certificate, I mean the cause of death, without informing the police. Then it will be a criminal offence. If the patient attends to a government hospital, it is the duty of the government medical officer to inform the police all the cases of poisoning, whether it is suicidal, homicidal, or accidental. So any poisoning, whatever is the reason for that, case of poisoning should be informed to the police. So this is the difference between informing the police. In private hospital, only homicidal cases are to be reported, and if the death occurs in the suicidal case, then only they have to report to the police. But in the government hospital, all the cases of poisoning are to be informed to the police. So this is as far as your legal duty is concerned. Now, you cannot wait legal duty, both actually start simultaneously. The moment the patient comes to the poisoning, the symptoms of poison. What is the duty of a medical officer? What is the duty of you as a medical physician? Of course, the treatment. What is the treatment protocol? What is the standard protocol treatment in the case of poison? It depends. We discuss as ABCD of the treatment. See, any treatment I told you, A starts for airway. See, the patient develop immediate vomitings, there may be choking, lot of secretions in the nose, in the mouth, the airway is blocked, there is obstruction for the breathing, airway is blocked. So the first thing, the foremost thing what you do is see that the airway is clear. You can do immediate suction, oral suction, the nasal suction. See that the external airways as far as possible are clear. So establish the patency of the airways. Then once the airways are free, then the breathing starts. The patient must be able to breathe normally with clear airways. If breathing is not normal for various reasons, depending on the nature of the poison, if he has taken some poison which causes respiratory depression, or sometimes the poison may cause constriction of the esophagus, constriction of the trachea, sudden choking. So in spite of being clear airways, there is no proper breathing. So you establish the breathing. You may have to intubate the patient. Intubation to start the breathing. That is, intubate and attach it to the ventilators, artificial ventilators. So the cardinal systems of the life. The cardinal, what are the systems? The respiratory system, the circulatory system, and the CNS. This on the first chapter. The breathing is to be established. SOS if necessary. If there is respiratory depression, patient is unable to breathe, going into the asphyxia, then there may be patient may have to be intubated. Sometimes even tracheostomy is done, endotracheal tracheostomy to facilitate the breathing. So it all depends on the way how the patient is presented, what is his clinical symptomatology. But the basic protocol, airway, breathing, and then I told you the circulation. When I say circulation, you see circulatory vitals, minimum, the pulse, the blood pressure, whether he is going into the shock, vasovagal shock, hypotension. So the establishment of the proper circulation is prime importance. So depending on the clinical condition, if the patient is in shocks, hypotension, or due to other things, tachycardias, bradycardias, each poison will produce a different symptomatology. See, when we go into each poison, there are cardiac poisons, there are other poisons which act exclusively on the heart. There are poisons which act exclusively on the peripheral vessels. There are poisons which produce increased heart rate, tachycardia. There are poisons which causes bradycardia. So, depending on the nature of the poison, the symptoms develop. So, you will have to revive, re-establish, see that the vascular system is functioning, see that the heart is functioning normally, heart rate is normal, blood pressure is controlled. They may need IV fluids, IV adrenaline, depending on the clinical presentation and the poison they have taken. And then CNS. The drowsiness, the level of consciousness, you will have to take care of those things. So this is A, B, C, D. Then suppose now we talk of different poisons, how to manage. Suppose a patient came with, I told you just now we were discussing about air pollution. See, if it is a big tragedy like stadium or methyl isocyanate, and it is a social problem. At a time number of people are involved, they are running. But if the exposure is to some air contamination, I told you about the agricultural workers. They are involved in a lot of the insecticide sprays, and many a times they come with the symptoms of poisoning, suddenly developing giddiness, railing sensation, becomes drowsy, unconscious. So if such symptoms are developed, your prime importance is to shift him from the surroundings, from that area of the infected areas. Shift him to the fresh air. Avoid further exposure. It's a thing of common sense, what you should do immediately. Shift him into the fresh air. See that he is not exposed to that contaminated air or smoke or whatever it is further. And then of course you encourage him breathing, ask him to take deep breaths in the fresh air, which may definitely help him. And if it is a contact poison, this also happens for the same individual. He was being spraying the insecticides, and when the wind blows in the opposite direction, sometimes most of the medicine which is spraying falls on him, his clothes. Many times, they do not take proper precautions. They do not have the masks. Now we know the value of mask day in and out. We are moving out to these masks. But normally the people who are working in the agricultural field, we ask them to wear the masks when they are spraying insecticides or weedicides. Normally, they don't do it, and they have got the specific advice. They should not work more than 2 hours at a stretch, and they should give a break of about 10 minutes after 2 hours of the spray. And if they develop any sort of symptoms, they should immediately stop it. And all these precautions are to be given. They should know. So it is the duty of the landlord also. At least he also should know that this possibility, these poisons are there. It should be widely, made understand to the people concerned, maybe through the media, through the papers, to various organizations where there is a meeting of the agricultural laborers. They should make them aware of all these things. So the contact poisons, the clothes should be removed immediately. Wash the body thoroughly so that any poison which is in contact with the body is thoroughly washed out. So the primary intention is further intoxication should be prohibited. It should be stopped. If it is inhalant, shift him to the safe place. Contact poison, yes, wash the part, change the clothes. Give him the fresh clothes so that the contaminated clothes are discarded, and contaminated area is washed with soap. So the further intoxication will be prevented with this. And I told you the poisoning can be through inhalation, by contact, by applying onto the skin surface, even the mucous surfaces. I told you it can be through natural orifices. So depending on the mode of entry of the poison into the body of an individual, we should first decontaminate. Decontaminate is very important. And injection poison, injected poison is also very common. Suppose the poison is injected into the body. injection means I may not necessarily, I said that taking injection syringes and taking the drugs, yes, that is also the poisoning. So many cases come with the drug addicts with the poisoning because they share same needles, same syringes, same drug. Sometimes they take excess drug, they have toxic symptoms, they have other associated symptoms of, there are various diseases and the problems transmitted in the drug addicts. That also I tell you when I speak of the drug addiction. So if it is an injected poison, and most commonly when I say injected poison is if it is a snake bite, if it is a scorpion bite, simply even if it is any insect bite which injects poison into the body. What should we do? How we do it? Detoxify or eliminate the infection. So these are the primary things what I am talking to you. So you should apply a tourniquet just above the bite. Tourniquet, application of the tourniquet above the bite is important. Because by applying a tourniquet, you can prevent absorption of the poison and its circulation higher up. See, in say a scorpion bite, even the snake bite, normally it is in the extremities, the foot, and you should just immediately apply a tourniquet just above the bite mark. This prevents spread or circulation of the poison material up into the body. How the poison is transmitted, how it spreads into the body, how the circulation of the body should be through the lymphatics. So the tourniquet what you apply above the bite mark, you cannot keep a tourniquet for hours together, say 4 hours, 5 hours, and then till you shift him to the hospital. Yes, you cannot continuously keep the tourniquet because there is a chance of developing the gangrene. See, normally out of anxiety they tied such a the tourniquet tied in very big knots, very tight tourniquet they apply. So the total blood supply is stopped, and there is possibility of developing the gangrene. So you should release the tourniquet after every 10 minutes for a minute. So this is mandatory. They should know that after every 10 minutes they should release the tourniquet for a minute so that circulation is established. So these are the things which people should be aware. And you can make a small nick at the place of bite and squeeze out the blood. Sometimes in some cases they even inject the adrenaline, which causes vasoconstriction and prevents the absorption. Sometimes the extremity is kept in very cold water, chilled water, 10 degrees or things like that. Again, the purpose, the idea of keeping it in the chilled water or cold ice is to prevent absorption, because extreme chill causes vasoconstriction again. But if it is a snake bite or some other poisonous insect bite, in our movies, many times we see in the cinemas the heroine will be she had a snake bite and she will be running, then suddenly the hero sees that she has got a snake bite, and since he is a hero, he will immediately start sucking from the site of the bite. He will suck the poison product. Do you think it is right? No. Just apply a tourniquet, no sucking of the blood. If unfortunately if there are some other on whether it is hemotoxicity or neurotoxicity developing, whether what is the nature of the snake, that we will discuss. But so never attempt to suck from the site of the bite. Your duty is you can apply a tourniquet, keep it tight for about 10-15 minutes, and release every 1 minute after every 10 minutes, and keep it immobile. So don't make the patient run in panicky, because that increases more circulation and more vascularity and then more spread of infection, poison. So it should be kept immobile, give rest to the part, apply tourniquet, make a slit, you can squeeze the blood, or sometimes you can use injection adrenaline or put it in the cold water. This is in case of injected poison. That is, if it is injected intramuscularly or subcutaneously. If it is IV injection, I think it directly enters into the substring circulation and the symptoms are very fast, and all these tricks, the tourniquet thing will not work in IV injection poison. Only if it is subcutaneous, if it is a snake bite, if it is insect bite, if it is scorpion bite, or maybe other things. The drug peddlers who take injection subcutaneously and intramuscularly, there, yes, this methods will work. But the most common poisoning I told you is ingested poison. Ingested is taking orally. So if the poison is taken orally, in your physiology, the normal emptying of the stomach is 3 to 4 hours. In 3 to 4 hours, the stomach contents gets emptied into the duodenum. So the food stays in the stomach for 3 hours. So the poison also will stay in the stomach for 2 hours. So if the patient comes to you within 3 to 4 hours of taking a poison orally or ingestion of the poison, you can do a procedure known as stomach wash. Stomach wash or the gastric lavage is the procedure to eliminate the poison which is present in the stomach. See, all the procedures what we were doing till now is to further eliminate the poison what is present in the body, and simultaneously you will be treating the poison symptoms which already developed because of the absorption of the system of the poison, and your primary aim is to prevent any further effect of the toxin by removing it from the body. So that is the basic principle. Sorry. So if the poison is taken by mouth, we do what is called stomach wash or gastric lavage. This is very important in your clinical practice. This is very important step in saving the life of the patient. It is also every one of you, all of us, we are trained in the medical practice. We should know how to do the gastric lavage, stomach wash, because this is one of the commonest emergencies what you treat in your hospital. So what are the or before the indication, how the gastric lavage is, how they wash the stomach. I remember in some of your own colleagues, my own students in the same institution, when we asked the question how the gastric lavage is done, my good friends, they also wrote in the exam, sir, we do surf water boiling water, surf water and wash it. Maybe they are impressed with the brain, the knowledge what they got is cleaning, washing means with surf or surf excel or whatever it is. So this answer, I am not just joking. The written documents are there. I got the answer sheet with me where they get stomach wash you do with the surf excel or boiled water. This type of things we have seen, or in the examinations we have seen some of our students do it like that. So stomach wash means it's a medical term, not your literal washing of the stomach. So when you come to your practical classes in the museum, you have got a Bose tube, a Bose tube or Bose tube, that is a stomach wash tube, a rubber tube. I think I'll speak more about the tube, what are the various parts of the tube, how it is instilled into the body, how the suction pump is used. I think I'll speak to you when I talk about, or when I take you a practical class in the museum. Bose tube, it's called Bose tube or gastric lavage tube, it's a rubber tube. Anyway, but the normal practice, in the clinical practice in the hospitals, we use nasogastric tube or Ryle's tube. That is inserted and then they do the stomach wash. So what are all the indications for the stomach wash? Number one, the poison must be taken orally. If the poison is due to some other mode of infection, maybe contact poison, maybe aerosol poison, or maybe due to asthma, there is no meaning in doing a stomach wash. Stomach wash, the indication is only if the poison is taken orally, if the ingested poison. Number two, the patient reported to you within 4 hours of taking the poison. If the patient has consumed poison last night, he comes to you in the next morning with the symptoms. It makes no sense if you do gastric lavage in this case, because no more poison you will see in the stomach, say 6, 8 or 10 hours after taking the poison orally. So the minimum common understanding is if the patient reports to you within the 3 hours or 4 hours of taking the poison, yes, you should immediately do the gastric lavage. So the procedure, how to do gastric lavage, and what are the things we use. I think we are getting late. I'll take this, the procedure of doing the gastric lavage, in my next class. Okay. So thank you for being here.